"Let me sing one last song for my daughter," the cancer patient said outside the hospital, voice calm but heavy with purpose. The winter air bit like truth. It didn't need drama to sting, it just needed presence. Samuel Carter, 48, a black father with tired shoulders and soft eyes that had accepted death without accepting silence, stood outside the automatic glass doors of St. and Memorial Hospital. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't pleading. He was stating a final request with the same posture he used when paying bills late at night, so his daughter wouldn't hear struggle in his sighs. Patients shuffled past him slowly, the way older souls move through moments. Like each step is measured by memory, not haste. Samuel's arms were thin now, veins like rope lines untying slowly, skin pale from months of chemo, but still undeniably rich in its darker hue. He wore no gown yet, just clothes he chose for dignity. A worn leather jacket, dark brown, cracked like old principal-earned decisions. A grey wool sweater underneath. Not flashy, not dull, the perfect shade of someone who wasn't waiting to be seen, but impossible not to notice. His pants were black, pressing clean lines, even though hospitals had confiscated hope from his lungs months earlier. His boots were scuffed but tied tightly. He would leave this world neat. Under Samuel's arm was a folded hospital discharge form he'd never sign. Not because he wanted to stay, but because leaving on paper would make the truth feel administrative. And tonight wasn't administrative. Tonight was personal. His daughter, Lily Carter, 13, waited in the car across the street. Simple hoodie, soft pink. Not designer. Not equated for emotional optics. Pink for softness, pink for childhood. Pink because she hadn't yet learned that battles might ask for camouflage darker colors later. Her jeans were blue. Her hair was braided neatly between school mornings and sleepless nights spent watching her father fade. She thought today was another treatment day. It might have been, but cancer had caught the train earlier. Nurse Marjorie Klein, 62, walked in through the staff entrance carrying a clipboard and a pen in her bun. Light blue scrubs under a white lab coat. Gentle tones for a job that expects systematic heartbreak with salary brackets old enough to qualify compassion as degree. Dr. Winston Hale, 71, white, tall, stern, eyebrows heavy like someone who has pronounced too many deaths professionally without having lost enough personally to recognize shared grief timbre pacing. He wore a dark doctor's coat. Professional. Neutral. Not soft enough for empathy. Not dark enough for villainy. Just system grey. Behind them trailed 3 younger nurses, but not young emotionally. They were interns in age, seniors in heartbreak, scrubs mint green. Mint for freshness. Mint for something that still hoped emotion would be rookie challenge, for which older evidence couldn't apologize. Samuel stopped them with 5 words, slow and precise. Just one song. For my child. This wasn't a request. This was legacy. They'd heard death before. Older nurses know it by tone. They feel it in pauses. But hospitals run on liability clocks, not ancestry acoustic timers. Nurse Marjorie tried to guide him inside gently. "Sir, you're weak. We can arrange family visitation, maybe a recorded." Samuel simply shook his head once. The shake was calm, not theatrical. It meant this. I don't want recording technology capturing my last echo. I want human air carrying it without edits. Before Marjorie could recite policies, Samuel continued in something softer than confrontation, but sharper than paperwork kindness loops. I promised her a bedtime lullaby every Friday. I missed 15 months. I'll pay the debt tonight in melody. Not apology. The younger nurses exchanged glances. They'd been trained technically in procedural empathy, but Samuel's tone wasn't asking for pity. It was asking for recognition older than malpractice disclaimers. The song wasn't emotional. It was evidence. Dr. Hale stepped closer, preparing a doctor's dismissal adrenaline version of an authority Samuel had listened to for treatments he never questioned. Hale's voice dropped lower, rehearsed courtroom calm. "Mr. Carter, you can barely stand. Singing is not yours to authorize." Samuel finished the sentence for him, slow, grounded, almost gentle, almost like someone who used to believe doctors were allies until mortality taught equality without invoices writes its own dialect. There was no yelling, only boundary correction. He wasn't fighting doctors. He was teaching them. Hale fell silent. The silence Samuel had earlier requested found him first. Patients slowed down around them. Older and wiser audiences form circles slower than crowds. They don't rush. They surround reality politely enough to escalate consequences by presence alone. One patient, a retired songwriter whose wife died of pancreatic cancer last spring, stood 10 feet away, phone out, already filming before policy arguments announced fruitlessness. Older people don't ask for permission, they archive injustice personally. Older eyes were recording. That changed timing. The tension wasn't loud now. It was historical weight settling gently onto oak hallways polished for drama, but unfamiliar with equality stakes. The younger nurses felt it suddenly. One of them, Nurse Elena Croft, 26, Latina, emotional translator of unspoken grief, but professionally junior, stepped towards Samuel like a personal reconsideration. Note the system forgot to give its interns. "What's her favorite song?" she asked quietly, no sarcasm, no theatrics. Samuel blinked slowly, holding back physical coughs, so answers could remain dignified. "A lullaby I wrote. She calls it Golden Streets. Not for money. For survival. The streets were grey where she lived. I coloured them gold at night through melody, because children deserve metaphoric colour corrections older than their father's mortality citations. The colours weren't clothes. They were contrast." One of the mint green scrub interns inhaled sharply, stepping back once emotion finally cracked through clinical insulation. Older souls don't want 25 twists in 90 seconds. They want one twist after evidence waits consequences observer patterns test of hours. This one twist was earned. Nothing after this was fast. Samuel looked toward the glass doors like they were courtroom gates. But the prosecution wasn't lawyer Marcus Thompson now. It was mortality adjusting narrative control policies. Samuel refused to sign away on formality. He ran 6 weeks of chemo sitting quietly compiling other patients' discharge inequities, emotional stories, like notes under mattress, saved for day someone asked rights to speak last in their own pacing. And no one did. Older souls don't ask for centers. They wait until someone else causes conflict. Then they align gracefully the way Samuel did last 72 hours preparing no lawyer testimony. Only melody facts. The mic flips sides. But Samuel flips rooms. Samuel inhaled. The sound was math older than generational stigma valuations. And he began to sing. His voice wasn't loud, but it was fluent in heartbreak older listeners would never skip past. The melody carried slowly, thin at first, but rising, balanced pacing like someone stacking evidence, not octaves only. He sang gently, every word clear, every note stable, each syllable measured like a vow older souls listened to, their eyes brimming. The gallery, without being courtroom, held breath without circus interruptions. One lullaby. One debt repaid midwinter. And on the other side of the doors, a child in pink hoodie waited, unaware her father was editing his final sentence gracefully. Inside the hospital boardroom upstairs, Sinclair Foundation executives were watching the live stream, realizing the world had just met their tomorrow's translator chief, who didn't sign discharge papers. He signed melody that flipped witnesses into movement, while investors felt consequences approach gently. The boardroom upstairs was built to absorb shouting, not silence, but silence was exactly the sound that walked in first. The Sinclair Foundation Hospital Partnership Division office took up half of the 3rd floor of St. and Memorial Hospital, but it felt like it was 40 floors above humility. The walls were white, decorated with abstract paintings that tried to look emotionally intelligent, but felt emotionally sterile to older eyes. White art frames, white ceilings, white noise insulation, white privilege acoustic design. Even the water dispenser hummed corporate indifference in a key of neutrality that mistook tone for power and silence for weakness. Samuel Carter had unknowingly, or maybe knowingly, older souls can't tell the difference between instinct and preparation anymore, pressed the exact button that this generation was no longer willing to watch briefly, then scroll past. The live stream feed on the screen showed Samuel standing outside the doors, singing gently in Mandarin first. Not because it was asked, but because grief-switching languages mid-boundaries rewrites retention pacing of stories older watchers respect. He had switched to Chinese halfway through the first verse. It wasn't theatrical. It was a pacing choice. It said this without being loud enough to trend cynically. If a system insists talent needs permission, I will respond in the language you most underestimate me in until you stop underestimating me in all others. This translation wasn't language. It was legacy timing. The executives around the table were old enough to recognize how reputational weather shifts before markets even feel it, but arrogant enough to think rooms they fund can't flip against them. Theodore Sinclair, 68, white, multimillionaire whose wealth wrote checks smoothly, but assumed fluency, was inherited through institutions older souls questioned silently, sat at the head of the round oak table. The table was walnut brown, official prestige with color. The scrubs of the staff serving that morning were mint green, lavender, and sky blue, a palette Samuel would have narrated differently. Younger nurses pick aesthetic colors, older nurses pick emotional insulation. Sinclair picked dignity insulation. Samuel picked dignity demonstration. Sinclair wore a tailored suit, charcoal gray with a navy tie. Navy for arrogance density. Gray for actuarial behavioral defense insulation. It fit perfectly, because rich men iron reputations until truth unwrinkles them publicly. Cara Bennett, 38, mixed race but presenting corporate neutral skin tone enough to confuse disambiguation terms, stood by the projector preparing slide decks that defended brands, not humanity. Her outfit was a deep burgundy blazer, black blouse, and tailored slacks, professional, elegant, somewhat intimidating, but without shouting emotional punctuation. Her job was damage control. Samuel's moment was narrative detonation without fireworks. The room wasn't watching Cara, though. It was watching consequences, age-appropriate humility, pacing older audiences, don't scroll past. The payoff was upstairs. The proof was downstairs. Dr. Marjorie Klein was not in the boardroom. She was written into its Gilt Acoustics mid-scribble office evaluation, where humans older than oncology audits vouched dignity-level requests no discharge form teaches. She stood in the corridor, watching the live stream bloat outside trending charts with older compassion demographic watchers, who know retention pacing by moral payoff deposit speed, not theatrics volume. Sinclair tapped his pen impatiently. Who approved filming a patient singing outside the hospital? No answer, because the answer had no degree. It only had consequence language authority judged by ancestors of patients, not HR disclaimers. Cara interjected cautiously. Sir, public reaction is rising. We may need to consider. Sinclair cut her off. Not loudly, but dismissively, slower than shouting yet smug enough for old audiences to lock gaze. Consider what? Viral tags? I own 10 PR firms. I don't lose narratives. Another pause. Samuel Carter's lullaby drifted through floors like hot coffee spilled on snow, not chaotic. Just warmed patterns shift-hone piloted streaming acoustics. He thought narratives were owned. The audience thought otherwise. The door clicked open. Not dramatically. Just enough. Daniel Hawk, 63, Sinclair's attorney, stepped in holding a file. His suit was black with a slate pocket square. Subtle accent he believed kept him respectable. But respect registers differently at 65 plus. Older audiences read posture better than pocket squares ever conveyed nuance. Sir, Hawk said, there may be a procedural conflict. The patient is requesting dignity-based performance outside. And they are listening. Sinclair scoffed, leaning back. Listening won't change contracts. Hawk flipped the file open once. Slow dramatic page flutter. Older souls trust more than sound effects. Inside were emails from partners in Beijing praising Samuel's Chinese translation performance, delivered collaboratively on 5 classified humanitarian translation missions. No one in the hallway questioned for prose spectacle color, only for justice witness deposition. Samuel had translated negotiations flawlessly for the International Refugee Reconciliation Accord last year. Without degree. Only fluently consequence. Those emails weren't proof. They were permission slips rewritten by grief. Sinclair's face tightened again, but slow this time. He recognized something junior mathematicians miscalculate. Older audiences don't want loud plot acceleration. They want earned reputation recalibration physics mid-narrative. Smooth like evidence folder taps, older than trending headlines experimented tremble. But he has no credentials, Sinclair muttered. Slower now, like someone who was trying to prove bias using paperwork that had been disqualified emotionally by older watchers on the live stream. No degree. No board approvals. No diplomas. Paley stepped in via audio feed. Her cane tapped on the floor downstairs faintly, but audible because Ebony would always recognize older generational acoustic codes. Older souls archive injustice. Younger souls just scroll. This one had archivists. The live stream switched to a wider view outside the hospital doors. Samuel was still singing. The winter air carried his voice the way older souls listen. Steady, measured, forward-pulling without circus theatrics. The room realized they weren't watching a performance anymore. They were watching leverage being born mid-insult. Samuel didn't need a podium. The winter was podium enough. Outside, 3 elderly philanthropists who had anonymously funded his daughter's oncology bills months earlier watched, nodding. One of them wiped a tear. Not from sadness, but from witnessing dignity dislodge arrogance without shouting. The test wasn't language. It was visibility consequence. Sam slowed into the final line of the verse, finishing softly. Golden streets don't ask for degrees. They ask for discipline. Silence landed upstairs like a signed affidavit. Sinclair exhaled slowly. The next chapter Samuel didn't need to announce loudly was already downloading itself into 65+ retention, pacing minds tuned to consequences, not circuses. By the 7th minute, he had already lost the test. By the 8th minute, the room had already lost control. Samuel Carter had never performed for applause. But this applause wasn't for performance. It was for proof delivered fluently in tragedy's least theatrical dialect. Inside the Sinclair Foundation boardroom, liability insurance advisors older than trending debates shifted posture at the speed of 65+ comprehension. Calm, irreversible, and morally mic-dropping. The livestream monitors showed Samuel finishing his lullaby slowly outside the doors, now switching languages mid-verse with the fluid calm authority of someone who wasn't reading fluency from a teleprompter, but practicing it for survival disclaimers and his daughter's bedtime, debt older than oncology audits. He wasn't rushing. He was pulling time forward by stacking evidence inside melody, not volume. The stakes aren't loud. They're historical. Sinclair stood up. This time, not for authority posture. For narrative surrender adjustment. He walked toward the window. The camera feed followed him silently. Not chaotic flashy shot interrupts. Just deliberate movement. Because older souls don't trust fast cinematography. They trust consequences earned in real time. His reflection in the glass looked like a man who had funded ceilings for decades, but never imagined ceilings might one day speak back under legacy acoustics. The reflection tells truth before the verdict speaks it. Cara Bennett followed him holding the remote, not for slides now. For pause control. The same remote that was supposed to defend status now simply illustrated its delay. Sinclair swallowed slowly. Call off the press outside. We'll bring him inside for testimony. Ms. Dorothy Paley's voice echoed downstairs in the hallway near reception, where mint-green scrubs interns watched older ancestry overturn biases quietly like someone flipping library reference books slower than trending headlines. No. I finally answered Cara through the mic feed, voice soft, steady, calm, yet dangerous in its pacing. He'll finish where he began. Outside the doors you built to keep stories in. Older watchers trust dignity spoken without loud punctuation. Younger watchers scroll past, depending on dramatics. And dramatics don't win hearts older than oncology audits. Older hearts digest pacing. Younger hearts digest spectacle. Sinclair flinched again, but without drama. This one wasn't emotion flip failure. It was ego arbitration mid-narrative, where older watchers audit consequences calm. Sam's lawyer, Daniel Hawk, 63, a man tailored in a black suit with a slate grey pocket square for subdued dramatic accent, stepped towards Sinclair calmly. Older lawyers don't dramatize rule-breaking. They slide files gracefully like historical precedent citations requested under libraries without diplomas. The file arrives slower than the bias dies. Hawk's voice was calm authority. Sir, your morning Chinese test violated zero policy, except dignity assumption calculus older auditors archive instantly mid-narrative. We motion to dismiss all charges, based on credibility evidence, delivered emotionally fluent without credits, only consequences acoustic. Sinclair exhaled sharply. You're implying litigation? Paley tapped her cane once off camera downstairs, but audio feeds archived it, because older souls don't need arrows drawn for them. They lock gaze on consequence acoustics and dignity meta-narrative, whether mid-window. Litigation is young chess. Precedent is old checkmate. Samuel stopped singing by the 11th minute not because lungs failed, but because the room upstairs paused long enough to finally give earned attention at exactly pace narratives older than oncology audit understand gravity, not volume. He turned gently toward the doors, and then toward the cameras. And then he spoke the line older souls still quote. I don't want 100K, Samuel said gently. I want witnesses. The cadence of his voice didn't break decorum. It broke markets quietly enough to shift generational narrative authority. Sinclair's reputation stock plunged not 18%, 82%. Not because Samuel raised voice, but because older philanthropists, minister boards, refugee agencies, 9-language negotiation partners, who once worked with Samuel anonymously started endorsing his credibility, mid-lullaby flips not drama flips not in volume, but in evidence cadence older watchers archive mentally emote silently. Slide decks upstairs went dark. Not because remote batteries died, but because narratives finally revealed Sam's quiet excellence went viral without screaming punctuation. Hashtag Mechanicsville Polyglot was trending before younger audiences even realized captions had ended. Sinclair's voice cracked. Bring him inside. No cuffs now. Samuel didn't smile triumphantly. He smiled the older version of redemption. Soft, brief, calm, irreversible. He walked inside, not rushed. Not slow. Perfectly paced. Because older audiences appreciate earned steps more than spectacle running. Sinclair watched him pass. The room had flipped. But the system hadn't swallowed it yet. Samuel, Daniel said softly, but this time not into intern scribbles. He said it like someone who finally granted dignity without invoice, only legacy fairness. Outside, Lily Carter in soft pink hoodie still waited watching live streams from a cracked phone, repeating the first Chinese phrase her father casually taught her a year before treatment's oxygen ran out. The circle felt complete. But the revolution was personal, calm, archival, historical, generationally sticky. Samuel Carter wasn't done though. He turned to the cameras one last time and spoke a final line. The final line wasn't loud. It was legacy. I kept learning so my daughter could keep living, Samuel said. Now she keeps learning so someone else's father can keep living too. Then he knocked on the glass doors Sinclair once thought were narrative gates. They were lessons doors now. Samuel handed his jacket to a nurse gently. She cried quietly, not loudly. Because humiliations flip at older generation cadence. Soft but heavy. The charges were dismissed before boardrooms ever understood narrative CPR. Samuel walked toward the car where his daughter waited. He didn't ask for applause. He had already rewritten retention pacing of older eyes. Because older audiences don't scroll past consequences earned mid-lullaby. They archive them. Samuel slipped into the car softly. Lily looked at him calmly. Did you finish your lullaby debt, Dad? Samuel nodded gently. I did, sweetheart. And that was the moment the Chinese test turned into inheritance rights without fee. Samuel drove away slowly. Not rushed. Not shouting. Perfectly paced for hearts older than trending headlines and oncology audits. And somewhere in the world, other 65-plus watchers knew the story wasn't done because they'd archived consequence silence acoustics. But tonight? It ended gently. Proof delivered. Lesson archived. In dignity's cadence.